Okay guys, I'm back as promised, second part of the video. So this is part 2 of the 3-part video. So we did the first video, which is the prerequisites. What are the skills needed to run Alphaverse? This video is the build. So if you're looking to build Alphaverse out yourself, or if you have done it, it's worth watching this because there's been some changes and some updates. The video abruptly leads straight into this. Apologies for that. The reason was because I intended to do this as one continuous video. It would have been about 3 hours long if I'd done that, and it's too much. So I'm going to end this here, and I'm going to jump straight in this video. So as always guys, if you like this, please hit that like button. Speak to you soon. Okay guys, so we're going to start off. Now, I'm going to state right from the very beginning that I'm not going to make any assumption here where and what platform you're going to be running Alphaverse on. I'm running mine in my own data center, and I'm running on using Citrix Xen Server as a hypervisor, but that could be VMware, it could be VirtualBox, it could be a VPS server, and usually if you buy a VPS server they come pre-installed with most things. But we're going to be using Ubuntu server, but I don't want that to frighten you guys, so I'm here to help you every step of the way. If you're not familiar with Linux, don't worry. When you're in Discord, you'd have a community of people here to help you as much as we possibly can. So the very first step I'm going to need you to do is download the latest version of Ubuntu server. And we're looking for, let's go back here, where it's got the LTS. That's short for long-term service. That's the version of Ubuntu that I want you to run, and at this time and date that is 22.04.3. Okay, that's the latest long-term service release, and that gets downloaded as an ISO file. Now if you're using a VPS, they will actually provide you with Ubuntu already installed on it, but I've already downloaded this. And what we're going to do, we're going to create one machine. We're going to create 2 machines today. One as a server, one as a client. And once the client is built, we're going to convert it to a template, and then from that template we can then deploy mini clients. This is not a lesson in how to run a hypervisor, how to install Ubuntu, but I am going to cover it because it's just very basic, and I'm going to whiz through this section here because it would be very different depending on what hypervisor you're using and where you're actually getting your copy of Ubuntu from. So for me, I'm going to create a new VM. I'm just going to call it Ubuntu, very out of date template. Now I'm just going to call this Alpha Server Test. Click Next. Now I've already downloaded the ISO image, 24.03 server. That's the image. And I think the only points that you need to pay attention to here is I give it 2 virtual CPUs, and I put in each socket, so you've got 1 CPU per socket, so it's got 2 sockets in my servers, 2 virtual CPUs, and I'm going to give it 2 gigs of RAM. Okay, and then I'm going to edit the storage. 10 gig is not enough, 30 gig should be absolutely fine. So I've got 30 gigs worth of storage, 2 virtual CPUs, and 2 gigabytes of RAM. Now for me, I'm using network 3, but yeah. And then we're going to create that. And what we should see, there we go. Install is going to be pretty basic, and don't worry about, I'm going to keep everything basic here guys. I am literally going to wipe this afterwards, so I'm not afraid to show you anything, because whatever I do show you today, I think it's important that you do see it, knowing it will all be deleted by the time you see this video. Okay, I'm just going to go for the guided install here. I'm going to update it. Always keep these things up to date. Okay, obviously change your keyboard layout to what's right for you. I'm going to install the default option here, which is Ubuntu server, which does not install any GUI. There's no shell, it's just command line only. I'm not using a proxy, that's done. It's just checking if the mirror locations are there. Okay, I'm going to set this up very much default. I'm going to use the entire disks. Leave that as is. Don't change anything. And then once you click done, that will commit the changes to the disk. And this is the part where you're going to customize it yourself. So you can put whatever you want here. And my password is literally going to be password for this, because you're going to see that later on. We don't need professional. We do want to install OpenSSH. So you click that, go down to done, and done again, and we will leave it running and I'll bring you back. So guys, while this is running, I'm going to create another virtual machine, but this one for the client. Yeah, I'm going to call this one Alpha Client Template, again using the same image. I'm just doing this to save time. I want them both at the same position and I'll bring you back. Okay guys, so that was the boring bit out of the way. So we've installed Ubuntu server. Now if you were buying a VPS server for somebody, you probably get it at this stage here. There's nothing on it at all. I've deployed two. This one is called Alpha Server Test and this other one is called Alpha Client Template, because what we're going to do is we're going to create a template and we can deploy many from that. And they're both at this stage, so I'm just going to log in, and this is where the instructions come in. So the server name is fine, I don't need to change it. So you follow the instructions here, but you will need to probably do that on a client because we're going to be deploying from a template. And this is where you'd set the host name. So this step we can skip. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to run an update and upgrade. So the command is sudo, so super user do, abd update, and that will just update the repositories. And then we're going to run an upgrade. And we're going to keep running an upgrade until there are no more upgrades to do. So I want your system to be fully patched. So if during an upgrade you get this sort of page come up, just click OK on it, because what it's going to do is just restart services. And we're going to run upgrade again just to see if make sure there's no more. And once that's done, we're just going to do sudo reboot. Just want to do a complete reboot. And as a final check, we do another test to see if there's any more upgrades. And I'm just going to check the client. Yeah, when that comes up to save time, I'm going to do an update on that one as well. Okay, we have a fully patched server now, and the client's been done as well. Just going to log in. Like I say, all the commands will be in the text document, which will be in the comments, and as a pinned message, so you can just download this text document. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to install NetTools. And the reason we're going to install NetTools is because it's difficult to find out what IP address you're using, because I don't want to be using this console interface because you can't copy and paste into it. So I want to be running an SSH session into it using putty. So I'm going to do sudo apt-get update, and then we're going to install NetTools. Okay. Now we should be able to run an ifconfig command, which we have got, which is going to give us the IP address. This is 172.18.2.112. That's running off the HTTP, so I want to change that. I want to connect in using putty. So, okay, I'm logged in. The putty gives me an advantage because it allows me to copy and paste within that session. So what I want to do, now you may not want to do this, but because I'm running on a private network, I want my machines to have a static IP address. I don't want them to have a DHCP address. So this is the server. So to do that, it's sudo nano /etc netplan and 000. Don't worry, these commands will be in the spreadsheet, and in here we'll have the network configuration. At the moment it's all set to DHCP. Now this is very finicky because, yeah, the indentation, the colons, everything needs to be exact. And what I have done is I've made your life easy as I possibly can for you by giving you a sample config in Discord. So when you go to Discord, here's a static IP setting already. So if we look at that, I should be able to just copy that. Now to delete a line, it's Control and K. And I should be able to just paste in here. And I just need to change it to my settings. Okay, for the purpose of this test, I'm going to give this server the IP address, a static IP of 10.0.99.1, and that's on a /16 network. So if you do get stuck with this, I'm here to help you. Now, if you're running a VPS, you won't be changing the static IP. You've got the address, whatever it is. So I'm going to save that. Control X, Y for yes, save it, and then you run a sudo net plan apply. Now what will happen is when I apply this, I will actually lose connection to that. Now what I've done in the background there, I've added that IP address to my host file so I can resolve this server to the IP address. So that's working fine. So I'm pinging alpha server test. So technically I should be able to reconnect in on a new session on PuTTY to the host name, which appears to be working. Right, we're in. So going back to our document, we can just copy and paste the command in. So first one, we're at this stage here, we've changed the IP address, yep, and I'm able to connect in using that. So we're going to install Node.js. Alphaverse runs on Node.js and JavaScript, and we're going to install SSH pass. You're going to need that later on. And we're going to install a piece of software called JQ. So if you have any questions on this, you can just reach out and ask me. There are reasons why we install everything. So we're going to pull down a copy of the latest version of NVM, and we're going to run the install bash in the same command. Okay, I just wanted to double check that. That's all okay. So what you have to do is you have to actually log out of this and re-log back in. So basically, if we duplicate this session, close this one down, it does say in the instructions log out to make NVM usable, and now we can start working. So we can do these commands. Literally copy and paste these guys, and then we install yarn. That's great. Finally getting around to actually downloading and installing Alphaverse. So when you run this command, it's going to request a username and password. You will get this username and password the moment you sign the software license agreement. So I'm just going to grab that. Okay, I put my username and password in, and then we should be able to just change directory into Alphaverse Live. It is there, and we're going to run this command. Right, what we're going to do, we're going to run these final two commands here. This will tell it. What am I doing wrong here? Right, we'll try that again. Okay, so that sets the origin. So when you want to git pull, it won't ask for the username and password again. So this one here is where we store the username and password, where you just put in the Mr. BTC Gambler. So if there's an update, all you need to do is just run a git pull. It's good I'm doing this with you guys because I'm finding errors in my script. And it's going to ask for my username and password again. Well, if that's gone well, when I say my username and password, it means be the password that be sent to you. If I run a git pull, it's already up to date. So if there's any updates in the future, you just run a git pull and it will update your Alphaverse. Okay, we're going to run through the rest of these commands. We're going to install yarn. Yarn install. Whatever's in the package.json, all the dependencies that are listed in the package.json file will get installed. We're going to upgrade. Keep your system patched, guys. Especially if you're on a PVS or private virtual server somewhere, because you've probably got public IP addresses on them. and we're going to run update the network packet manager. Well, if you've done everything right, guys, you should have, if we run an ls here, we should have all of Alphaverse in here. So this app image file, it gets pulled down on the server, but it's not used on the server. That's used on the client side, so we're not going to do anything with that here. You could actually delete it, but we're not going to bother. But we're going to see certain folders. We're going to see a server folder, we're going to see a client folder, and we're going to see a bin folder. In this root folder of the Alphaverse live folder, you're going to see a package.json, which when we run a yarn install, it refers to that, and when we run network packet manager, it'd be whatever you defined, and we're going to look at that in a moment. You got a client config and you got a server config. Now we need to populate these out, but under the bin folder, actually you guys might better help me. So everything I'm running is on GitHub. If I bring up my Visual Studio, so here's the whole code base within Visual Studio that is linked to the GitHub repository here. So you should see an exact replica of that. So when you did a git pull, you've pulled down this. That's where the app image file is. The client config we'll cover in a moment. The package.json, which is when we did a yarn install. These were all the dependencies that it's going to install. And when we run network packet manager, you'll see these are the things that it's going to run. So we run Dicebot or the server or the client. It knows what to run. Now the problem I've got is under the bin folder and the app image file here, they need to be marked as executable so you can run them. So if anybody knows how to set up GitHub so that they're automatically defined, so I've got a load of bash scripts which I've written here which are going to be essential for running Alphaverse. And if we just take one, for example, restart the server. This is just a bunch of commands that you could either run manually, but I've written a script that does it for you. If you restart in a Dicebot. As you can see, some of them are quite sophisticated. And if you run in a VPN as well, there's quite a complicated script that goes on in there. But none of this is executable. So basically we have to make those executable. So we run a command called chmod, and we're adding +x to make them executable. And every file with a .sh extension will be added. So if we, for example, we did an ls of the bin folder here, it will list them, but they're not executable. But if we make them executable, you'll see they change color and run the same command. They're now green. And I did that by running chmod +x under the bin folder star.sh. And again, it'd be in the commands here anyway. So believe it or not, that is actually done. We could actually start the server, but we're not ready yet. We're not ready. We need to populate out a couple of things. So the first thing we need to do is we need to go to this web page here, which is passwordgenerator.net. Right, when you come to this page, guys, this is the default page, and you need to change a couple of things in here. So first and foremost, we need to untick this box here where it says include symbols, because sometimes passing through these types of symbols through as a password can be problematic. You can do it, but you've got to do it in a very particular way, and I just don't want to complicate things. And we definitely want to, we need to exclude the ambiguous characters as well. So again, they can confuse things as well. So you want it to look exactly like this. But we want to generate two passwords. One which is 22 characters long. And that's okay. And we copy that. And I'm just going to store this in a password temporarily, because this is the information that's going to go into the client config and the server config. And the first 22 character password will be the username that you use to log onto the web console to manage Alphaverse. You could make that longer if you wanted to. And we're going to create a 64 character password with the same settings. I'm going to copy that. And this is a much more secure password. Now this is the password that is used when the client communicates with the server. It uses sockets. It talks in a particular port number. And embedded within that communication is this string. And if it doesn't receive this string, it rejects it. So it adds a layer of security to your environment. You know, even if somebody got into your network, there's no way they can send commands to the server unless they knew that password. So we set that to a very strong high level 64-bit, and again these are going to go into the configuration files. So now that we have, and to make life a little bit easier, I'm going to use WinSCP to do this. Okay guys, I've logged in. I've got using WinSCP because it's much easier to use, and I'm logged onto the server, and there's the Alpha server live, and we have our 2 passwords here that we configured in this file here. So we're going to open up 2 files. So first we're going to open up the server config. So here you're going to define what we call the basic auth user. That is the account that you use to log onto the web portal part of your front end. So I just call this BTC Gambler, but you can call it whatever you want. And here's where you're going to put that 22 character password. Make sense? And the auth token is the 64-bit character is going to go in the auth token here. This is what gets passed through. Now we do need to define a recovery amount, and just for the purpose of testing I'm going to put 1,000 in there. Okay, and that becomes, if you understand, and you should understand at this stage, what Alphaverse is and what a recovery pot is. This is where you define it on the server side, the recovery amount in the client in the server config file. So we can save that, and if we open up the client config, we're just going to put in there the auth token, which is that 64 character. Now the master host is going to be the name of your server, so I put it in there, and this is why it's so important when we do the client side that we change the host file so that it can resolve the server name. And it's using port 3000, so it's HTTP, the name of your server, port 3000. Now the username is not relevant on the server side, neither is the API key, and neither is the 2-factor secret, and neither is the best. Not a lot of this is not relevant, but what we do need to do is put in what we call the API server, because that gets used by the command JQ. Okay, and that is going to be the name of the server, alpha-server-test. And where it's got the sudo password, mine was password, and again JQ uses that to pass through for any commands that it runs using shell commands. It can pull what the sudo password is from the client config. Now you can save this, and later when we get to the client we're just going to copy this over the server config and the client config to the client. So the important thing is that the majority's work's done now, so we should technically be able to start the server. Okay, I'm back in the server, so we should be able to just run the command restart server. And what that does, it runs in its own little screen, so we should be able to, for example, now log into that screen. That is running. That is actually running, and to verify if that's running we should be able to go to the web page. And remember it's in port 3000, and if this is right it should ask for a username and password, which it does. This is the password that we set here in the client config. So we said the username is BTC Gambler and that was the password. And we're in. We actually have Alphaverse set up and running. But we've got no clients. So that's the server build done. So now to build the client, it's a very similar process, but we just need to make a few more changes. So I'm going to show you that now, and I'm going to whiz through this. Right, I've run an update and upgrade. There's no more patches, and I've already done it in the background. So really what we said is a complete repeat of last time, but this time we are going to change we're not going to change the host name actually because it's a template, but I will change but I'm going to install NetTools first. Okay, I can run an IF config, and this has got an IP address of 172.18.2.115. 172.18.2.115. Okay, I'm in. So now that I'm in, I'm going to do repeat. I'm going to statically assign an IP address to this. Okay, I've set this one as 10.0.99.100 as the template IP address, and then we apply that. I've assigned alpha client-template as a host entry into my machine. Okay, I can close that one down. And we do what we did last time. We just basically replicate exactly everything we did. So if we go back to the document, the client build, update and upgrade done, net tools done, so it's just go through the rest. Okay guys, so I've done all of this. I've got basically the same setup as we did for the server build. All these commands have been run. And these are the bits that are going to be slightly different. So for the client, we do need a desktop, and we're going to install the GNOME desktop. But this time we're going to use a very minimum install of the GNOME desktop. So we just need to go through the rest of these applications, guys. It shouldn't take too long. Well, that is it, guys. We are very, very nearly there. Okay, we have actually got the client set up. I'm going to make a couple of changes. So this one I will add to the instructions as well. I want it to set to automatically log in, and the way we do that is so guys, it's this file here, this custom.conf under GDM3. I'll add that to the instructions. And the way you get Linux to automatically launch into the desktop is very easy actually. So you need to, where they've got hashes in front of them, you need to take them out. So automatic login enable equal true, and then unhash automatic login, and we're going to put the username which we set up when we've set up Linux in the first place, and that was BTC Gambler. You see it doesn't ask for a password here. I think that's a bit of a security vulnerability personally, but anyway, we can exit that. Yes to save it. Remember to put sudo in front of it. I'll change the command here. Okay, all going well. By sudo reboot. Yeah, all going well. That this should not only launch into a desktop, but it should automatically log in as well. Right, we've logged into our desktop. It's fully patched, it's fully updated, and we do have a problem with this build because it doesn't have the settings option, and I've seen this once before. And the way I got around that is, okay, the way I overcome this before, I reinstalled the control center. There you go, it did fix it that time. I think what happens, guys, because I've seen this before, if you install the GNOME desktop, and if you haven't rebooted, and then you try to install the control center, it doesn't know that the desktop's installed, it probably fails. Anyway, so this is critical, because you'll see later on, we're going to set this machine up to automatically launch the Alphaverse agent, and we don't want it logging out. Okay, we need it to be the screen not to lock or anything. So we're going to go to privacy, and then we click on screen, and we're going to turn off never blank the screen, take off the automatic lock, and just turn all these off. And that will prevent this machine from basically doing anything. So we installed a piece of software called Startup Applications, which is this one here, and we're going to change this, and whatever's in there, just remove it because it doesn't need to be there, and we're going to add in there to automatically launch the Alphaverse agent. Now that is under Alphaverse Live, but rather than launching this, is what we want to launch, there is actually a bash script that runs it in memory, which runs a lot faster, and it's called Start Alphaverse Agent, and that's just a shell script, and I'm going to show you that in a minute because we're going to log in using WinSCP. Okay, so we've got WinSCP open here for the template here, and we're going to do a couple of things here. So one of the first things we're going to do is, remember before I said if anybody does know how to change GitHub so that these are executable by default, we need to change the properties of this app image file so it's executable, otherwise it won't run. And whilst we're here, we will take a copy of the server config and the client config, these two files here, and just copy those over, because that's going to have in there the passwords and everything we've already predefined. So it's got the server name. Yep, everything's been defined. The password, the sudo password, and under the server config, it's got the auth token, and you basically use them password and the recovery pot amount. Now at this stage here, if I went onto the client config and I put in a real username, a real API key, a real password, real two-factor secret for an account, we could actually run this. But we're not going to do that just yet because this is going to be a template. But I do highly recommend that we do test it. We do actually run a client on it, because if there's any configuration issues on this, we want to capture it here before we convert it to a template. Does that make sense? Now I've got two things that I need to do that won't be relevant to most of you. So first and foremost, because I'm on a VPN, I need to install a VPN. So this video cuts off here because I'm going to create a separate video how to set up VPN and how it all works in Alphaverse. Because I need to do that here, this kind of video is going to, from your point of view, it's going to end here, and it will continue once I've got my VPN set up. And also because I'm running on Citrix Zen server, I need to install the hypervisor Zen tools into the virtual machine as well. Otherwise it doesn't run optimally. So again, they're just going to be separate videos. I'm going to make those changes and I'll bring you back. Hopefully exactly looking like this. It won't look any different to you. Okay guys, I'm back. I'm hoping roughly where you was before when we left it. You will spot, the keen-eyed of you would have spotted that there's a change. And there's a change, there's a new folder there called VPN. So I used, because I needed to set up VPN, I used this as an opportunity to recreate a new video explaining how to work with VPNs, especially with the new changes that went into place on Alphaverse, how we manage duplicate IPs and how it's fully automated now. So if you're not using VPN, you're not interested in any of that, but there will be a separate video for that you may find interesting. So guys, we're pretty much ready to go now. So really all we need to do is, if I go into Alphaverse and go into client config, and if I put in their real client details, which I'm about to do, we should be able to run. And the only reason I'm going to run one, just to test it, just to make sure everything's functioning, is then I can remove that data, and then I can convert this to a template and we can create multiple accounts. Makes sense? So yeah, we're going to give this a test. So I'm going to populate this out and I'll bring you back. Okay guys, so I've fully populated out with real account credentials in here. Most of it's going to be blurred out for you because obviously it's got very sensitive stuff. So the auth token here is the 64 character we said that we need. This is when we do the socket connections, that's what it passes through. Here's the server that we had defined earlier, we know about this. Here's where we put the casino account username, API key, password, two-factor secret. Okay, they're all blurred out. It's important to note that the two-factor secret, within Alphaverse we've written a JavaScript version of Google Authenticator, so whenever you withdraw money, tip money, you need a two-factor code in it. So we've written a JavaScript version of Google Authenticator, and it pulls from here the two-factor secret in order to do that. And when you do create this two-factor secret and you put it in here, this then becomes your 2FA token. So it's really important to know, guys, that because this becomes your sole source for where your two-factor authentication is set up, if you lose this file, you've lost access to that account. So one of the most important things that you need when you run Alphaverse is to back up. The moment you've set this up in the account and set this up as two-factor authenticator, there is no other way to retrieve it. If you lose that two-factor secret, you've lost that account. So I can't emphasize enough, backup is so important. Now whizzing through the rest of this, the currency is set to TRX. The bus threshold is a separate calculation, and I have a separate video explaining how to do that, and we'll cover that later. Recovery threshold, again, is how much do I want to start. The sudo password we know as password because we set this for this demo video here. That's used by a bunch of bash scripts, that anything that requires the sudo command, like restart VPN for example, it can use the JQ to pass through from this client config what that password is, and that's why we need to put it in here. Now the simulation mode, I just discovered actually that by default was set to true. That needs to be set to false. Otherwise it will use simulated balance, not real betting. and that is a separate video altogether. I will promise you I'll change this before I go live, that when you run a git pull that will be set to false. Kind of glad I went through this because I haven't done this test for quite a while. Now the API server also needs to be set here as well, because that is also used by JQ. When we run certain commands under the bash script, it copies stuff from the server to the client, like known IP addresses and stuff like that. So it's really important. The next step we're going to do is we need to tell the client how to connect to the server. Otherwise, he doesn't know what alpha server test is. It can't resolve that. So we need to edit the host file in the template so that it can resolve alpha server test to an IP address. And we're going to do that right now, and it's quite simple. So again, we're back in putty. And we're going to edit, we're going to do sudo nano etc and then hosts. And there'll be a bunch of crap in here already. So the IP address, I'm going to put that in. Right, there we go, guys. So I've literally added there 10.0.99.1, which was the IP address that we set for the server alpha server test. And if I save that, I should be able to ping it from the client. We can, and that works fine. So we now know that name resolution works from the client to be able to talk to the server. Now the server, I actually have a host entry for every client as well. And the reason I have that is because I've got some backup scripts that I run, and the server connects to every client, but the client only needs to know how to speak to the server. But the server will be probably another masterclass lesson talking about backup, and I use SSH pass to do that. So here we are, we have our server, we're running, and the question is it going to work? Let's test it. Minimize that screen. We're in the Alphaverse live folder. We should be able to just run bin. No, we can't just yet. Just yet. Frustratingly, we need to do one other thing. Remember, we set this as a startup application. We haven't actually run it. I can manually run it, which I will do, or I could reboot, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to manually run it. It's under the bin folder, and it's called start alphaverse agent.sh, and this will launch the Alphaverse agent. And this was the critical part to getting Alphaverse working, to bypass Cloudflare. The cookie is stored in the session here. When we click on verify in here, that stores the cookie. When we're running API requests from the client and the Dicebot, we are basically sending it not to the casino but to its loopback address, and this is sitting here listening for requests on port 8080 on its loopback address, and then forwards it on. So this, because this agent becomes critical. If you try to run Alphaverse without this running, you just get a refuse command, because it's just sending it back to the loopback address, and it's this that does all the magic, and this has got a browser built into it, and this stores the session cookie. This is what makes it work. Okay, fingers crossed. Let's open up the browser. Bin restart a client, and this should hopefully get our first client up and running in here. It did. I was a bit nervous there. It took a bit of time. That is actually running. So if we to see that running, and we can go into that screen, right? Well, if you don't understand the idea of screens is a piece of software that gets installed onto Ubuntu, and it allows you to run virtual monitors, and inside those virtual monitors you can run bits of code. So you can run code inside a screen, and you can switch between them. So if I typed in screen-r for reconnect, and then typed in client, we can see what's going on in there, and that's running the software. If I control C there, this will error out, and if I just start it again, it will come back up again. See that? Now at the moment we're not actually running But we can restart the dice bot by clicking here, hopefully, and we should. It's not running because, but I actually know why it's not running. I actually know why it's running. There was an efficiency change made to the environment, and this is where I had performance issues. I wanted to run everything in memory rather than running off the disk. I found my disk IOPS were my biggest bottleneck, so I changed a lot of the code so it runs in memory. So what we needed to do beforehand is there is a command in the bin folder. It's called run in RAM, and what this does, it creates a RAM drive and mounts it under the MNT folder, and it's called Alphaverse Live. So when I click the restart dice bot, it's looking there to restart it. So I forgot to run this. We rerun this, that will kill the client. It's going to copy everything over from the Alphaverse Live folder minus the agent into a RAM drive and mounts it. And now it's hopefully you should find it all working. Give this a second. There, we are running now. So it's actually betting. So if we go into screen-r client just to confirm that is correct, and I'm going to stop it for it temporarily because I just wanted to show you the path it's under now. It's under MED folder and Alphaverse Live. That is a RAM drive. Okay. Rerun the client. You have to hold down Control and push A and then D to get out of the screen. And if you do screen-r dice bot, we should see the actual betting going on. And there we go. We're gambling. We're gambling. Alphaverse is up and running at this stage. Congratulations. I mean, it's humongous still. It's like, yeah. So I'm going to pause that. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go back to WinSCP. I'm going to take out all of the information that's currently stored in the client config. Okay, I'm logged onto the template file here. So what I'm going to do, all the information I put in this client config file here, that is pertinent. The username, the password, the API key, and two-factor secret, I'm going to remove it because I'm happy with this builder. I know it definitely works. And we're going to convert this into a template. And we're going to roll out, say, maybe 3 clients, okay, with real credentials in them. And I'm going to show you how we're going to do that. So let me clear out this information and I'll bring you back. Okay, so we are good to go. So I've desanitized that, and so we know this has a static IP address as well, but it may well be different for you, and that's fine. So if I shut this down, and once it's done, I convert this to a template. And then from here I can deploy a new VM and I can call it, you know, whatever I like. And it's just next through that, and we can watch that boot up. Okay, that's just booting up. Hopefully all gone well. It should automatically start the Alphaverse agent, which it has, which is great. If it requests, it should hopefully, little tick box, it didn't need it. Okay, right now, so obviously this is set up with a host name. That is the template, and it's got the wrong IP address, and so what we need to do is run a few commands in here. Okay, I've logged back on, so I've logged on what it thinks is a template, which it technically still is this stage. So we need to make 2 changes. So we need to make a change to the host file name, so the client name, so it's sudo host name ctl and then host name. Okay, we're logged in. So all I need to do now is go into WinSCP and put in the client details for each one. Okay, I put the client config in there. Let's just go back in here. Yeah. If you see this box come back, that's good. Let's bring up the web page. And then it's running RAM. Run the running RAM command again. Should reload it all, and we are running, and we got one running. So I will do the next one. What I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to put this on presenter mode. There's a nice little feature here, because if you ever want to stream this or want to show this to anybody, you want to do your own videos, then it's got that presenter mode there. Anything sort of sensitive data can be blurred out. So it was thought about, even when like one of them loses connections, that's even blurred out as well. So I've gone to lengths to hide sort of personal sensitive information. Should you want to create videos or stream or do whatever you want to do, I highly recommend you run in presenter mode. You know, I don't think there's very much people could do. You couldn't break into somebody on a VPN connection, but if you wasn't, and you was using VPS, you definitely do not want to be sharing your IP address. Right, you can just watch me. I will deploy another one. There'll be no comments. Okay, so I've just added the client config on that one. So this is the second client here. So we've basically got one client active here. So technically, I should go into the Alphaverse live folder. I'm going to say this should only be relevant if you're on a VPN. Hopefully, the next client should come in, and it does. So it doesn't take long, guys. It does not take long at all. And I suppose the only way you're going to get confident in this is by actually doing it. So this video does continue. So there'll be, if I can work out how to put chapters and such forth in YouTube, this next section is just like, great, I've got Alphaverse up and running. What the heck can I do with it? And that is going to lead on to that. So I'm not going to do it as a separate video because it just will get lost in the sea of things. So the important thing is now, because you can understand that Alphaverse is just merely a framework. What you run on it is entirely up to you, and it's your own choice. And you're literally limited by your own imagination what you can and can't do with it. There's a load of stuff that comes bundled with Alphaverse that you're free to change. You obviously can't change the source code, but you can make copies of them and you can make your own versions of your own strategies. And I've got spreadsheets and tools and everything to help you to make your job as easy as possible, the best I possibly can. And that's what this next video part of the video is, because now I've got this all up and running and I know how to build it all and I know how to scan it all out. What can I do with it all? And so that's going to be the next part. Now for me, this has been 5 hours in the making so far. I'm going to take a break. So I'm going to carry on the video, but for you it'll be instant. Okay, and this video will carry on from there. So I'll speak to you very soon. Change of heart, guys. I know I said that I wouldn't do it as a separate video because it would just get lost. But it was too long, too bloody long. Already 50 minutes. That's just too long for a video. So I'm going to end this one here and keep an eye out for part 3. I'll speak to you all again very soon.